It's great to be here, and I'd like to just spend a few minutes talking about the positive impact that healthcare and the pharmaceutical industry have had on all of us. They've changed our lives. They've given us better quality of life. The pharmaceutical industry has given us better outcomes from serious diseases, eliminated pain and suffering. But pharma's done business the same way for 100 years. Find a molecular target, screen for it, things that hit the target, and sell them. And what I'm proposing to you today is that the world needs an alternative that is called bioelectronic medicine. Could I have the first slide, please? And bioelectronic medicine is such an alternative. But before we get to that, let's take a little walk through history. So I think you got a clue earlier today. How many people have been born since 50,000 BC, give or take? About 109 million. And how many had died already? 102 billion of them. What did they die of? They died until about 100 years ago, they died of infection. That's what they died of. And the advances in medicine and pharma have all but really eliminated infection as a major cause of death in the world today. What is the major cause of death today? It's here. It's inflammation. It's these diseases are the major killers on the planet Earth today, and they're not caused by infection, but they are caused by inflammation. They share a common cause. And drugs from the pharma industry today targeting inflammation are a market that represents, at a minimum, $100 billion of the trillion-dollar industry. I mean, this is just the anti-inflammatory market. This is not the oncology market, the cancer market, and the other disease-specific markets listed here. The inflammation component of this alone is $100 billion. So you can think about the enormity of the problem. You can think about the enormity of the opportunity to help people. And you can think about how many people are affected. Or you can think about one person. You can think about Kelly Owens. So Kelly spent much of her life suffering from Crohn's disease, complicated severely by arthritis. Spending many years of her life in and out of a wheelchair, spending many years of her life using a cane, losing her jobs as a teacher because of disabilities, failing every available medication, failing hospitalizations at an expense of millions of dollars to no plausible or useful advantage to her life. So clearly, Kelly needed alternatives. And my colleagues and I at the Feinstein Institutes at Northwell have been very fortunate to discover an alternative. And that was based on work we did that revealed that signals traveling from the brain in the vagus nerve control inflammation and can turn inflammation off. And the way it works is that the vagus nerve runs from the brain to all the organs of your body that you never think about, but that the brain is taking care of. And one of those organs that the brain is taking care of is the immune system. And the signals in the vagus nerve we discovered are turning off the inflammation in the immune system. These signals, people think of the vagus nerve sometimes as a copper wire. It's not. It's like a transatlantic cable comprised of 100,000 copper wires. And what we've done is map inside this cross-section of these copper wires, these little neurons. We've discovered that a couple of thousand of them, perhaps a few hundred, are critical to controlling how much inflammation occurs in your body during some of those diseases I listed before. And thinking about this, we reasoned if we know these nerves control inflammation, we should be able to build a device to control the nerve to turn off the inflammation. And so we spun out a company called SetPoint, which will be disruptive and is disrupting the inflammation therapy market. And SetPoint built a device to implant on the vagus nerve. It controls the signals that go down the nerve to the spleen. And in the spleen, the nerve endings release a molecule called norepinephrine, which interacts with a T cell, a white blood cell, that responds by making a second molecule called acetylcholine, which interacts with the cells that cause the inflammation, called macrophages, and turns them off. That 30-second video clip is the result of 20 years of work and 500,000 man-hours in the lab. 20 seconds is a pretty good summary, I would say. What we can do now is literally talk about implanting a chip on the nerve in your neck to control those nerve fibers to turn off that inflammatory response. And this has been done now in trials by SetPoint, and actually replicated by other academic groups in other indications to show that you can turn off inflammation in humans. We've published many papers on this. We've garnered support from NIH and DARPA and others over many, many years. We've got deep industry collaborations through the Feinstein and Northwell to advance this field called bioelectronic medicine, and it's incredibly exciting to me. But nothing was as exciting over these 20-year period for me as the day, September 21st, when I got an email. Now, it's hard to read in the back, but I have to tell you, on the left-hand side is an email from Mary Woolley. If you think research is expensive, she's a lobbyist in Washington from Research America. And then below that, Diane Quinn, our controller at Feinstein, budget email draft. Those are both bad emails. But in the middle is an email from Kelly Owens that said, "Thank you for saving my life. I wanted to take an opportunity to thank you for saving my life. When I was 13, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease." It still makes me have tears in my eyes. So we called her up, and we brought Kelly in to meet her, and she told us her story. She had moved her and her family to Amsterdam to enroll in a trial by Set Point to have a vagus nerve implant because she failed all those drugs that I showed you the slide of a minute ago. I showed you her picture a minute ago. So how's she doing today? She's doing great. She's 25 months with a vagus nerve stimulator. She's not taking any drugs, and we hired her. She's now our patient advocate and education director. She handles the countless emails we get every day from patients who want a device instead of a drug. She's built a database of more than 600 patients, referring them to clinical trials where appropriate, saving their information for when new trials become available. And she's already referred about 20 children to clinical trials for non-surgical approaches to their Crohn's disease in the hopes that they can derive benefit. This is just the beginning. This is not the end. This is the very beginning. And it's exciting to be a pioneer in the beginning of something. Scientifically, if you're a pioneer, you look at all the papers that are coming out on PubMed. There's thousands of new papers coming in the last 5 years under the search words of neuroimmunology. But there's other definitions of pioneers, and I see some in the room who are pioneers and can share this. Pioneers get the arrows. Settlers get the land. And so some days it's really exciting being a pioneer. And some days it feels like this. The pioneer's out there in the forest, and everybody doesn't want to see the progress. But there's been a tremendous amount of progress. Set Point this year announced a first-in-human study implanting a chip, a device, which is a fully integrated ASIC battery and lead the size of a fish oil pill some of you took this morning. It's shown here next to a penny. That device has now been implanted in 16 patients in the US in a very successful trial. 5 of the 10 patients who had failed multiple biologic agents, as Kelly had, have had clinically significant endpoints. 2 of them are in complete remission. And so this is the tip of the iceberg for a disruptive and innovative approach to treating inflammatory diseases such as rheumatoid arthritis. And Set Point is continuing to move the clinical development downstream on that. These kinds of results have also been reported independently from the Karolinska Institute by gastroenterologists studying Crohn's disease patients. I won't go through the data. The take-home point is really exciting. What this says on the left is that 6 out of 8 patients are currently in remission from their Crohn's disease, taking no other drugs, just the implant to treat their inflammation on their vagus nerve. And the second cohort, the adjunctive therapy group, is fascinating scientifically because what that means is these are patients that had failed all their drugs, did not have a great response to the vagus nerve stimulation alone, but now with the vagus nerve stimulator working, they're going back on their drugs and they're having benefit from their drugs that they previously failed. So there's some fascinating science to be done there about the relationship between the neural control and the pharmacological control. We have had an extremely productive and exciting collaboration between the Feinstein Institutes and Northwell Health and GE. And over the last few years, we've generated a lot of excitement and enthusiasm about the possibility of using ultrasound in a non-surgical approach to stimulating neural circuits. And we recently published a very important paper in Nature that looked at 2 endpoints in animals. One was targeting the vagus nerve to treat inflammatory conditions in mice and rats. and that was effective. And the second was to target the control of blood glucose levels using ultrasound targeting vagus nerve pathways in mice and rats. And so these advances are moving very rapidly. We're currently in the midst of wrapping up a clinical trial, and hopefully, if they invite me back next year, Ramon, we'll be giving you a clinical update of the ultrasound studies that are happening in patients today. What I'm really excited about is a company that we spun out on the 4th of July this year, born on the 4th of July, called MyString. And this company, led by Trevor Hawkins, who you'll hear from in a minute, is going to take advantage of the more than 40 clinical trials that indicate you can have clinically meaningful outcomes by stimulating the vagus nerve through the ear wearing headphones that look just like this. This guy's having vagus nerve stimulation, listening to Yo-Yo Ma. This is very plausible, very tractable, and the best way to do this is to integrate what you heard this morning, the big data questions, with this hardcore scientific mechanism questions. And to do that, we're going to manufacture 25,000 of these headphones and give them away through patient activation groups, Crohn's and colitis societies, migraine societies, sleep anxiety groups, and we're going to monitor the data on 25,000 patients and figure out the right way to do the signal and the right way to do the stimulation through the ear, because no one knows how to do it. Not me, not nobody. And this is how you figure it out. This has been an incredibly exciting time. You know, it's really nice for me to be here today to publicly acknowledge Jeff Ling and Dan Wattendorf, who at the time, both of them were at DARPA back 20 years ago when all they were shooting at me was arrows. And Jeff and Dan, who are at this meeting, were leading the funding of this through DARPA, so I'm forever grateful to them. We have deep collaborations over the years with NIH. Intellectual Ventures is collaborating with Sanguistat on a neural tourniquet project to stop bleeding through bioelectronic mechanisms. We have a center in collaboration, a sister center in the Karolinska Institute. Martine Rothblatt at United Therapeutics has worked very closely with us, and Lance Becker, who you're going to hear from. We spun out a company with SRI International called Neurome to look at the best way to process the signals before they go into the headphones. And I mentioned SetPoint, who also, Yakov Levine, is here on behalf of SetPoint, so you can talk to him. But I saved the best for last to say that this is the beginning. This is not the end. And I do see a clear path to a world beyond pharma, not one where bioelectronic medicine eliminates pharma. That's naive. But pharma is already investing heavily into this. GSK and Abbott and J&J and others are already investing heavily in these ideas, because pharma is not in the business of making pills and screening molecules. They're in the business of making therapy, and this is going to be part of the future. To me, it seems inevitable and unstoppable. And if you don't believe me, when I'm done or at lunch, you can meet Kelly Owens yourself, because she's here somewhere. Kelly, where are you? Where is Kelly? There she is. Say hi to Kelly. Thank you.